Oh, that's a special sound, isn't it? The buzzbait. It is known for catching big bass, but some of you that have watched this channel for a long time know that this isn't my favorite lure. But recently, I caught some big bass on it. It got turned back on to fishing buzzbaits. So I want to kind of go into some tips and tricks, things I've learned about fishing the buzzbait, different types, and I want to show you the monster bass that I caught. So check this out. Another tip that's helpful with the buzzbait is to, when you make a cast, keep your rod tip high so you can keep that blade spinning on top of the water. And as you start getting it closer and closer to you, you can lower, oh, I just had one right behind it. You can start lowering the rod tip. Once you get about halfway, you can lower your rod tip down. And then that helps keep that blade just right flush with the water. If you hold your rod tip too high, when you get really close to the boat, you can make that blade point too sharply up, and you can miss the angle that you're supposed to be reeling it at. Oh gosh, I got him on the trailer hook that time. That's a good fish. Put that trailer hook on. Oh yeah, just barely came up and grabbed that. Oh my gosh, that's a big one. That's a giant. That's a giant on the buzzbait. Wow. Man. This is a huge bass right here. Huge bass. Just play him out a little bit. Oh, I watched him come up and barely get it, guys. Look at that. And I was just talking about that trailer hook. Look at that, right on the outside. Right on the outside of the head right there. Just got the trailer. So, I was glad I put that on. I never would have got that fish. That's a nice fish. That's probably a 6.5 pound bass. Look at that. Whew. That's awesome. Awesome. Hey, when the old men talk about that buzzbait bite, you better listen. Yes. Winston, hush. I'm trying to talk about buzzbaits over here. He's all charged up because of the buzzbait. You know, it's loud. It's got them all going crazy over there. Let's head into the garage now. I want to show you some tweaks, some of the different kinds of buzzbaits, some things to look for in a good buzzbait, and tips and tricks. All right, I want to show you 3 different kinds of single blade buzzbaits. There's double propped buzzbaits. Here's one right here from River to Sea that doesn't even have blades on it, but you can consider that a buzzbait. I think this thing is terrible, by the way. I don't recommend that for a buzzbait. You know, I'm pretty particular about buzzbaits because I've had so much trouble over the years in areas and times where I'm like, man, I should be eating a buzzbait. Either I'm fishing a lot of lakes that they're just shy about it, or I just wasn't fishing the right one. So I've kind of got it narrowed down to some ones I really like that I've figured out that have worked over the years now. The single blade that doesn't have any clackers, doesn't have any extra noise basically. It's just the arm. This would be like the cheapest buzzbait that you get, you know, at the Bass Pro aisle, like the BPS, whatever. It's got a little bit of squeal, a little bit of squelch. It's gonna churn up the water, obviously. It doesn't really have a unique sound to it. It's just gonna be making bubbles on top of the water. It's gonna make a little bit of a squeal. I want you guys to listen to all of these because the sound is super mega important when you're talking about buzzbaits. So, a little bit of squeal. Okay. Now here's another example of a single blade buzzbait. This one has a clacker on the front. It also has holes drilled in to the buzzbait blade itself. What that does is creates a bubble trail going across the top of the water. Do you hear the high pitched squeal there? And then you've also got the clacker. okay? Much higher pitch squeal. So that's a different sound. The next buzzbait that we have, and this is the one I was using in the video. This one's awesome. This one's made by Nichols. Not very lifelike looking at all. What makes this unique is the blade makes contact with the head every once in a while. Now you're gonna have to bend this out, you know, when you catch fish, you're gonna have to bend it. Already you can kind of hear the squeak, okay? And that just comes with fishing it. A deeper squeal, a deeper squeak, and when that prop hits that head, it makes a clacking sound. It doesn't do it every turn either. It's like every other turn. So it smacks the head of this thing, which makes even more noise. And that's gonna adjust as it's going through the water, going through waves. And of course, like I said, you need to kind of bend that so it's getting close to there. The sound of this one, the clacking of the head, for whatever reason, they hate this one the most, I could just tell you. Sound is very important, and that's also gonna come from wear on the buzzbait. And that basically just means like the more you fish it, just like the more you fish a spinnerbait, the better it's going to work, the better it's going to feel in the water. When a spinnerbait arm gets really worn down, it thumps harder, it's looser. And when a buzzbait, when the metal components get worn down, it tends to squeal more. You can artificially do this though, and this is one of the tips that I want to show you. Now, one of the ways you can get more noise out of your buzzbait and get that squeak, that squeal, is to make the metal on metal contact points basically touch each other as much as they can. Now, if you look at this buzzbait right here, focus so you guys can really see a little bit better. It doesn't have the flat part of the crimp on it. For whatever reason, the way this one came, it just didn't have it. And that's why it has the least amount of noise. So there's not a whole lot I can do with this buzzbait right here to give it more noise. On a buzzbait that has the flat part of the crimp, or I don't know what you call that, the little button. You basically put that on the end and you squeeze that with pliers, and then that keeps the blade from coming off. Now on a good buzzbait, if you get it right out of the package, that won't move. And the reason you don't want it to move, you take your fingers and move it side to side, you don't want it to turn. If it's turning as well as the prop, it's not gonna allow it to grind as much and really make that squelch sound. So you can take your pliers and really squeeze that onto the arm and get it to sit still, and then it's gonna create more contact and more turning on that metal on metal churning. Another way that you can get more sound is to make sure that the flat parts are as flat as they can be. They're touching as much as possible. And then you can take pliers like this that have grooves in them, cut in, just some needle nose pliers, and you can kind of pinch around the edges of those flat areas. And what that does, it creates little grooves in the metal when you pinch down. It kind of grinds and makes the metals kind of form into each other more. And all you're really trying to do is make that metal on metal contact as much as possible, get as much friction on there to get those sounds to really come out. When you look at this one, the Nichols that I like so much, it doesn't even have the totally flattened out. It's kind of sitting at an angle. So I could even make this better, get it to sit on there a little flusher. There we go. Bend that straight. Really squeeze that down. There we go. And it sounds good at a low speed, which is what I like. Really, when you get the bites on a buzzbait, it's at that slow churn most of the time. So you want a buzzbait that you can churn pretty slow and get that squelch. God, that sounds so good. I could listen to that. When it sounds good, the fish are annoyed by that sound. It's not like other baits. That's why in the past, with so many other topwaters, I've thrown them over buzzbaits because it seems like they eat that bait a lot more. And with a buzzbait, it's almost like they're just annoyed by it. They'll come up and they'll swat at it or they'll swirl behind it. And I really think that's just because it's not as lifelike. You know, they've seen spinner baits, they've seen skirted baits so much over the, last 5, 10 years, they see that just spinning on top of the water, it's not as appealing to them. One of my favorite places to fish buzzbaits, where I will break that out a lot, is in ponds. Like ponds and rivers that don't get fished a whole lot, really shallow banks, basically just like walking on the edge of the pond and reeling it slow around there. That works all the time, but there's a lot of lakes you go to where they don't tend to hit it as good, and that's where when I end up throwing a whopper plopper or a walking bait or a popper style bait, just because I think the fish eat it better. That leads us to our next point. Trailer hooks are essential on a buzzbait, just because you're getting a lot of annoyance bites, so they'll come up and swirl on it. So make sure to put a trailer hook on here. This is just a Gamakatsu. It's got a little surgical tubing on it. You can pick these up just about anywhere. You put that surgical tubing around the eye of the hook, slide that on there. That kind of keeps it in place so it's not swinging around all over the place. And when a fish comes up and just barely, you're gonna get them on it. And if you saw the mondo that I caught on that, that's how I actually hooked him. It came up and it swirled, and I hooked him on the top of the nose. Whereas I had some other bass that actually ate both hooks. That big one, a little bit smarter, just came up and swirled on it. So want to make sure you have that trailer hook on there. As far as gear goes for buzzbaits, same gear you'd throw a spinner bait on. 7-foot, medium heavy or medium, that's fine. But just make sure you're throwing either monofilament or braid. That makes a difference, keeping that blade high, keeping it churning. Those two lines float, fluorocarbon sinks. So I would stay away from fluorocarbon. It's gonna drag the nose of the bait down. You don't want it to be a spinner bait, you want it to be buzzing. Well, let's talk about colors for a minute on buzz baits, because I kind of view this as the same way I do frogs. White, black. Maybe a little bit of shad variation in the white, but white, black. I throw black when it's dark conditions. Love to throw that early morning and late in the evening, or even at night. That can be a really good pattern sometimes. And the white is kind of like mid-morning, maybe it's brighter skies, maybe it's clear water and you go with more of a translucent with a white or something like that. But I mean, I throw black almost 75% of the time. It seems to be kind of like a frog. I like a darker colored frog most of the time. But it's either one of those two. I don't mess around with throwing crazy other colors, fire tiger and all that, black or white. Keep it simple. So if you guys are wondering more about, which one is my favorite, if you had to just pick one, I would go with the nickels right here. And this one was sent to me. I was filming that video where I caught that real big one. I caught a lot of other fish on it as well, but I was filming a video for MTB Local, which is a local subscription service for Mystery Tackle Box. And this is one of those that I had. I'm not sure if they have this available on their site, but I'll try to find a link to it somewhere, just because I think this buzzbait's really good. I think it's one of the best ones I've fished. Just the way it runs, the way it sounds, it takes a little of adjusting, but I think it's one of the best ones that I've ever fished. So mega confidence in this one. I also want to hear from you guys in the comments. What do you think about going in-depth lure tips like this? I'm thinking about doing more of these and starting a live stream series. We'll call it Lure Live Streams. I like that name a lot, actually, it's pretty good. Where we just go in depth on all sorts of lures, so that way we can kind of cover whatever you guys want. You can let me know what you want to hear about, and I can do things that are some of my favorites, some that maybe you want to see that aren't my favorites, that I need to learn more, but just go in depth, for 10 to 20 minutes, whatever it takes, to go into the gear and where you would fish them, and little tweaks, little tips that I could see working on the bait, or things that I've learned over the years. So let me know in the comments if you like this style of video to continue doing in live streams later on down the road. And that's it for this video, guys. Go get you some buzz baits. Get to squeaking them on top of the water. Make some bass pissed. And then send me your photos on Instagram, with your pissed off fish that you caught on a buzzbait. It used to be this big joke between me and Craig, every time we'd fish, he'd throw a buzzbait, because it's one of his favorite lures, and I was always like, man, you ain't gonna fish no. Finally, I ended up catching a big bass on a buzzbait while we were fishing, and he gives me crap about that all the time because he's like, man, I told you, man, buzzbait, man. He doesn't really talk like that. Anyway, the buzzbait is good at certain times, and it does catch big bass. It's known for that, so there's that. And fishing freaks, I love you. Don't forget to support the channel if you like it by going to the merch store. You can get fishing freak gear, you can get Texas rig gear, and we're working on more. And don't forget to check back here every other day, pretty much. Hitting you with content pretty much every other day. So check back here, same place, not really the same time, but sign up for the notifications and you'll get them. Follow me on the socials. I'll tell you what's going on behind the scenes. And I'll catch you guys on the next one later. Actually, we're gonna close it out with a buzzbait.